You want the truth? Well, the festival.
Hold on. Let me do the intro again because I was on mute. Hello, welcome to the August 26th edition of the Decaturish.com Twitch show. I'm your host, editor, and publisher Dan Wisenhunt. Our guest today is Joy Pope, executive director of the Decatur Book Festival. I asked Joy if how she was doing. She said, "Do you want to know the truth?" And I said, "I always want to know the truth." So, what's the truth, Joy? How are you doing today?
I'm in the weeds.
Yeah.
You'd think that this is smaller festival. It would be less hard to put on, but putting on a festival, virtual or otherwise, at this point, you're in the weeds, and that's where I am. I
Gotcha.
have too much to do in a day,
Well,
but it's all good.
yeah, busy is always good in any line of work. And just joining us is George Cheedy, Decatur's contributor, publisher of the George on Georgia column. George, how are you today, sir?
I'm okay. How are you?
Good. So the way this works is we're going to just kind of launch into our discussion. If you have questions, please create yourself a Twitch account, get into our chats, and ask us a question. Hey, Stout, how are you? And we'll try to answer them as best we can. So the Decatur Book Festival is still on this year. It's going to happen virtually. Normally, the way the Decatur Book Festival works is this really great free event takes place over Labor Day weekend in downtown Decatur. Obviously, with the pandemic and everything else that's going on, we're not going to be able to have it physically this year. We are going to move it online. So, Joy, tell me a little bit about that whole process and tell us how you. I mean, I'd say it would be obvious, but tell us how you came to the decision to take this virtual this year and what that meant for you as far as planning this event.
Well, I watched the spring festivals, Wordplay in Minnesota, the Bay Area Festival. There's a number of festivals that happen in the spring. And we're in touch with one another. Before the COVID, we were just mildly in touch with one another. I mean, the other book festival directors. Once COVID started happening, we became friends fast. And I just kind of kept basically eavesdropping on what they were doing. And a couple of them switched to virtual programming almost immediately. And I started in March and April watching virtual book festivals happen. And it was a decision to make. Do we do that or do we lay low like Mississippi Book Festival? They just decided to postpone everything until 2021. And that would have been a pretty good option for us, frankly. We were short staffed and we've been free a long time. So we don't have like a lot of gold in the bank, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
So I I I didn't really know what to do, but I spent this several months just paying attention. And then one day at the end of May, I just woke up with this idea that we could do it virtually if it were small. And and from then on, it's just it's the party we're at. Like you think you can plan for that, but you can't. I just there's no way to know what you have ahead of you when you're switching things out. Like you decide to have a virtual festival, then you need to have a good virtual festival. Well, that means you need technological help. And it turns out that virtual festivals are dependent on marketing. So you need professional marketers. So the whole summer has been this series of watching my set of core competencies grow by leaps and bounds.
Yeah, I bet you've had to learn a lot on the fly, as I think we all have to a certain
Yeah.
degree, with doing the virtual stuff. One thing I noticed, I went ahead and gave the festival access to our calendar. You know, we have this community calendar on Decaturish, and it's supposed to be for events. Well, you know, not a whole
Yeah.
lot of in-person events happening. So the book festival. I think it's one of your volunteers or somebody reached out to me and said, "Can we put all this on your calendar?" I was like, "Sure, go ahead." And it's like events all the way through October. Like they start Labor Day weekend, and I think they go all the way up, maybe up until November. I haven't looked at the
No,
calendar.
they end on October 4th.
Okay,
It's
so
one,
they
yeah.
okay. So what? Talk to me about the decision to instead of. I mean, again, this is something that I think logistically would seem obvious, but just for the sake of our audience, what prompted that decision instead of trying to jam it all into one weekend? spreading it out and parceling it out over several weeks in September.
The one of the first questions I kept trying to get the answer to is how much online programming people would be interested in, and whether people would want to be on their computers after being at work. Because back when we started doing all these Zooms, we were exhausted by one Zoom. And then like a month later, we've got 5 Zooms a day. And that's a new kind of exhaustion. So it seemed like a good idea to spread it out.
Yeah, and I definitely think you'll have that recorded as well, right? So if somebody
Yeah,
wants to go back and
that's right.
check it out. So who are some of the guests you've been able to line up for this year? If you could give us some of the highlights.
So I knew our book festival is one of the biggest in the country, and that who knows why that happened, but it's kind of a monster to manage. You can't just take that and turn it into online programming. We've got a good reputation, and so I get pitched authors by publicists all the time. I have buckets of opportunities to have really high profile authors here all the time. So, what to do with that? Like how to create a rubric. And because it's our 15th year anniversary, I decided we would invite only authors who had come before. And that gave me some parameters. So I knew who they were and for the most part, but I also looked at some of our attendance and book sales data. And I made a list of the most popular authors from the past and just started going down and inviting them. And Diane Capriola does our children's program, so I told her the same thing. Ted Nelson does our culinary program, and I told him to do the same thing. And we started just piecing together basically an alumni festival. And then we let each of those authors decide what to do with their event. So they could either just focus on new work, or they could champion a cause, or they could champion an up and coming writer or poet. So as it turns out, we have, I think, 43 authors all total. Some of those are connected to the first 15, and some are connected to some of these traditional ancillary programs that the festival always has, like the Lillian Smith Book Awards that Georgia Center for the Book puts on, that sort of thing. So it turned out to be an organic mix of authors that I think really reflects what the community likes, because it all started with the ones that were the most popular.
So if you're just joining us, this is the Decaturish.com Twitch show. Our guest today is Joy Pope, who is executive director of the Decatur Book Festival. Our other guest today is Decaturish contributor George Cheedy. If you have a question, please create yourself a Twitch account, give us a follow on Twitch, and get into our chats and start asking questions. So, Joy, the format of the events, are they all going to be done via Zoom? Is there going to be some other video? How is that going to work?
So Crowdcast is our platform.
Okay.
We chose it because it has a wonderful online chat room that goes alongside the program. It also has a separate Q&A. We just liked it. It's elegant. It's better than Zoom in terms of, like, Zoom's got some problems with online trolls and crashing. I think the entire thing crashed the other day.
We let a troll named George Cheedy in here just today. Let's look at him. He's right
Yeah, I
here.
can't understand that at
Yeah,
all. Like
yeah. I don't know how you
a
got in here.
failure.
I had to check with somebody.
So we chose it because of those months that I spent studying what other festivals were doing. And the one that impressed me the most was the Hay Festival in Wales. 24,000 people showed up for one event.
Oh wow.
It was, and I showed up too. I got chills. I was actually in my car running errands, and I signed on to it to see how it went. And I got chills thinking that I was with 24,000 people from all around the world, like New Zealand and Ohio and Great Britain, whatever. And we were all, it happened to be about Wordsworth's poetry, and we were all interested in Wordsworth poetry. It felt like history in the making. Anyway, I copied a lot of what they did.
How much of the business that occurs at the book festival is direct sales between authors and their audience? Would you say? Do you have any sense of that?
Well, through the booksellers,
Mm-hmm.
I think the booksellers as a collective, we have 7
Mm-hmm.
that we work with, independent booksellers. I think they're bringing in around $150,000 in revenue.
Each or total?
I think total.
So what are they going to do this year? Because obviously you're not going to have that component.
Yeah.
So how are you going to
Well,
connect them with with those audiences?
so each event has a co-sponsored bookseller.
Okay.
We want every person who buys a book to buy from an independent bookseller. And the way we divided it up, we kind of went by the culture of the bookstore. So Karis Books and More is the oldest feminist bookstore in the country. So they got a lot of the social justice and, that sort of thing. Eagle Eye Books has a new demo kitchen. So they got the culinary lineup. We brought in Brave and Kind for the first time. They're going to be one of our partner bookstores, and they got a YA panel called Raise Your Voice for Teen Activists. Little Shop, of course, got some of the children's panels. And then we work with Tall Tales in Tucker and Foxtail in Ackworth. So they got some panels as well. So this is a tough thing. Every single person who buys a book in Decatur, all of your listeners and watchers should certainly support their independent bookstores. They're suffering, and it's a catastrophic loss to not have the book festival for them. To tens of thousands of dollars in revenue is being lost, but we're trying to do the best we can. So, I'm really encouraging people to buy from their independent booksellers.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things people don't realize about the book festival is just how many businesses make
Oh
or
yeah.
break their year on that book festival. You know, they got the restaurant sales and the vendors and everything else. Now, before we had planned this, and I think the reason I reached out to you is you had emailed me and said, "Hey Dan, I'm doing a thing. It involves the restaurants, but we're not quite ready. Are you ready now? Can we talk a little bit about what you're going to
We
do with
can
the
talk
rest?"
about it. It's not sewn up. It's sewn up for Steinbeck's, but I'm
Okay.
working on the other. So all of this is my desire for the book festival to be used for economic development and economic recovery. I'm really interested in that because I see it happening every year at the festival, and I think we can do better. I think we can maybe next year when it comes back to the physical festival, we can create systems, an ecosystem that helps with economic relief. But for now, I just wanted to help restaurants a little bit. So
Mm-hmm.
um, we have this wonderful culinary lineup. By the way, the Decatur Book Festival is famous for its culinary lineup. We're a big deal in the world of cookbook publishing. And we have such a foodie town. So I thought I would ask restaurants to make dishes from the books in the culinary lineup. And then
Oh,
I would help those restaurants and the authors by providing 5 books that they can use as giveaways in either takeout orders or if people come in and eat on the patio or something. So starting with September 8th, well, actually, this is just the only one that I've sewn up. So it might start a day earlier, but on September 8th, if you order takeout from Steinbeck's or you go and eat on their patio, then and you mention the Decatur Book Festival and you're one of the first 5 to do that, then you get a free copy of the book that is being presented that evening on our event.
Got you.
And Steinbeck is making oxtail soup, I think, and they have a wine to pair with it. So it's pretty cool. The book is really cool.
George, did you keep raising your hand? Did you want to say something?
well, just one, we're talking about food, which is always fun. Um, I actually, my interest here is about how authors are going to sort of act and interact with the festival. I'm specifically interested in new writers who are use the festival as a means of introducing themselves to publishers. It's kind of a weird social thing to try to do this over Zoom. Have you had conversations with authors and publishers about this sort of social interaction there and sort of the deal making that gets done?
Yeah, well, the authors that we invite, even if they're debut authors, are usually represented by publicists already. But this is not a great year to be having a book tour. Where there are virtual book tours, there are virtual festivals. We're all doing the best we can. For some reason, it's not translating into great sales. I think there's a chance that Amazon's being used. We're all at home. It's easy. It's something that I want Decatur to do better about. I don't want people in Decatur to buy from Amazon, but I think that's happening all over the world. So it's the way I'm thinking about how I can help with the debut authors and all authors is promising that if that they can get invited again when we have a physical festival. So even the authors that we've had this year who are suffering because it's their book tour, I'm going to invite them back and give them another chance. But for the most part, it's just not a good year to have a book tour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, George. Go ahead.
No, it's fine.
No, I think everybody's having to make their clients whole again. I know we had to do that when the pandemic started. That first weekend, we had to pull half of our ads off the site because half of our ads were events ads, and so
Yeah.
all those ads went poof, and they didn't ask for their money back, which is great because that money had been spent. But we're gonna take care of them, when things get back to whatever normal is, and
Yeah.
so I think that's a great approach as well. With the Crowdcast platform, getting back to platform for a minute, what is the level of interactivity that people are going to be able to have with authors? Because that's one of the things that's really cool about the book festival is you can ask
Yeah.
questions and have that participation aspect. So how does that work?
I think it might even be better than at the physical book festival. I always notice that people get frustrated that they don't get to ask their question. Now you get to ask your question.
Hmm.
We'll get to it. It's there's not a time limit, so I think there's a chance the Q&A could be a little better, and you get to interact with one another in the chat in the way that I did with that Hay Festival situation. That was fun. That was pretty cool. In a way, when we get back to the physical festival, I want to flip it and try to capture that spirit that I'm seeing happen right now, where people are gathering and sort of maybe out of a sense of desperation to connect with one another, really trying to connect in the chat. Hello from Ohio. Hello, I'm from North Georgia. It's very, very meaningful. And so I think there's a little silver lining to some degree in the way we're presenting this from that perspective.
Yeah, there's some things that sounds like you can take it into future planning to
Yeah.
have some of these online components. So we got some comments. I want to read to them. Somebody asked, "How do we donate to the Decatur Book Festival?" And Nikki Salcedo, hey Nikki, we love Nikki. She put a comment. She put a link, and it says DecaturBookFestival.com/support/donate. But if you go to DecaturBookFestival.com, there should be a donate link. And that DBF is a nonprofit, I believe, correct? And so, what do the donations pay for? I think would be the next question. What are you getting? What are you helping the festival do by donating?
So for 15 years, or 14, I guess, we have provided free programming. It's been free. It's been fully free. And while we're providing free programming, we're filling up the restaurants, filling up the hotels, filling up the bookstores. But the book festival is free. So there's no, other than selling or renting space for the exhibitors in the street fair, we don't have a way to make any money. So we don't have a lot of money. It's an interesting problem every year that we've got to raise enough money to put this free event on in order for all of that to happen. Your donations help pay for all of that.
So they pay for the organization, the permitting, and
Yeah.
the all that fun logistical stuff that goes into a festival. So that's. Have you thought about doing like a
Yeah.
ticketed part, and what have the discussions been around that?
Well, it depends on how much money I raise in order to bring back the physical festival, because I need to raise a lot of money. That's what you would donate now to, is the hope that we can bring it back. And I mean, I think there's some easy ways to ticket things. Premium seating. The first two rows can be expensive, and the rest of it can be free. The various events, you can have ticketed parties and that sort of thing. So I'm definitely going to embed the next physical festival with earned income opportunities. But I've got to get to the next physical festival, and that's where the donations are needed.
So if you're in our chats and you're so inclined, check out that link. Help them get through this year and hopefully help them come back next year. That would be a great thing to do. Of course, the book festival, as we all know, does a whole lot for this community and has done so for a long time. So they're definitely worth supporting. What have you given any thought to the date and the weekend of the festival? Because I know that's been discussed as well. Because Labor Day weekend in Atlanta is usually crazy. It's not going to be this year for obvious reasons. But what thought has been given to the time on the calendar when you do this?
I would love to change the date to the first weekend in October. And this year, the virtual festival is going from Labor Day to the first weekend in October. And I'm hoping that I'm sending secret messages to the people who are going to be making that final decision that that first weekend in October is a better weekend for a book festival.
Why so?
It wouldn't compete with Dragon Con. It wouldn't compete with the National Book Festival that is also over Labor Day weekend and it's quite high profile. It's not as hot. Isn't that good enough?
Yeah, I mean, the heat would alone would be enough for me.
I
George?
know.
No, that's about right. That is one of the things that and competing with Dragon Con, it's a thing. Like I've definitely had to make the decision about whether or not to go to Dragon Con or the festival in some years.
Yeah.
Honestly, it depends on who's talking where.
Yeah.
It's always fun to see the interplay. Like I always did love like whenever there was a guest that went to both, or
Yeah.
you'd see somebody getting off the murder train.
John Lewis.
John Lewis. God bless.
John Lewis with his comic book.
God
Yeah.
bless John Lewis. I own that comic book, and I'm very proud to have it.
Oh,
He's a.
yeah.
From an economic standpoint, we want those hotels to be full because that fills up the restaurants and the bookstores and the merchants. The Dragon Con can fill both hotels in Decatur because people like to stay in Decatur. It's a foodie town. It's cool. The book festival can fill the hotels. We should do 2 weekends. It helps us.
Yeah.
The irony. So last night I was with a group of protesters who were downtown in Atlanta over the most recent shooting out in Kenosha, and we were walking by the Sheridan, and suddenly this group of people, like we're talking like black militants carrying rifles. They're not all that militant, to be perfectly frank. They all turn and are like, doggone it, we should have been at Dragon Con right now. This is ridiculous. Like, look at what they've done. Like, this is, and then it starts to, like, should you be shocked that these are people who have, like, sort of a serious sort of thing about dressing up in costume to go to Dragon Con? That's a topical sort of lead in to a question about Black Lives Matter and sort of black authors and black writers and black topics at the virtual festival this year. I'm kind of wondering how you're approaching that.
Did you look at the lineup?
I did not actually, because I suck.
Well,
Like,
you should take a look. So I was starting to program it right about the time that all the Black Lives Matter issues were happening. And first of all, if you look at the sales data and the attendance data from past years of the book festival, the African American authors bring it. People say I could have watched Jericho Brown all day long. Tayari Jones had a line that went all the way down Claremont. I mean, people show up for Roxane Gay. They show up for Tony Tipton Martin. So why not? I just went with the organic nature of the festival. And I had the thought, the only thought that I had is I could flip it. If, say, in the past, we've maybe had 60 or 70% white authors and 30 or 40% black, why not switch it? It's good time. So that was a thought in the back of my mind, but I actually didn't need to really push it because those were the popular authors. And because I gave each author the freedom to curate their panel, it just kind of organically bubbled up. So we have a festival that is largely in celebration of Black voices. All 4 of our notes, the keynote, kid note, cook note, end note, are African American authors. The culinary lineup is in celebration of African American and Southern cuisine. And I was proud of it.
Like that in particular has been a thing for me, like for a long time. So I'm a foodie. I live in Atlanta. I'm a foodie. There's a real argument emerging right now within the sort of food media about sort of racism in the culinary literary scene. That you start looking at like 100 best 100 best chefs in the United States, and you're searching for a single black face in the group, and it makes one wonder about the criticism, um, the the which comes back to who gets the loan from the bank to start the restaurant in the first place. I'm gratified to see that you're going to have some black authors talking about black food. To be frank,
Not only talking about black food, but talking about black food history. Toni Tipton Martin is a scholar, and she's written a book about black historical cuisine. Belinda Smith Sullivan, Todd Richards, uh, Tiffany Barrier, Chris Williams. I mean, the whole thing is just extraordinary.
cool.
It is cool.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a good a good time. Who are some of the who are the keynote speakers this year, Joy? If you don't mind telling
Jericho
us.
Brown just won the Pulitzer Prize for poetry.
Yeah, that's
Natasha Trethewey, the former poet laureate of the U.S., is doing the end note. Kevin Young has a new book of African American poetry, 250 years of struggle and song. He's coming back for us. We've got a crime panel with Tom Mullen, Attica Locke, and S.A. Cosby. And that's moderated by an Emory history professor who's written a book called Presumed Guilty about African American incarceration problems. So that whole crime fiction panel, it has this actual nonfiction aspect to it as well. We invited Jasmine Gill, the African American romance novelist, and she brought four of her romance novelist friends. They're all people of color, and Nikki Salcedo's moderating that panel. So it's just really great.
Nikki Salcedo, friend of ours. One question you mentioned the crime panel. Crime. People read about crime.
Yeah.
People love to read about it.
Yeah.
We have in our own soul searching as we've had this national discussion about race and racism, have amended our own policies with regard to how we cover crime, how we write, how we write about it, when we write about it, how we follow up on it. How has that affected the literary world that writes about crime for a living and has to sell these books? And how has that affected your plans for that track this year?
Well, I hadn't thought about that. I think about it all the time in terms of the news, but I hadn't thought about it in terms of fiction until we got to this panel. So I invited local writer Tom Mullen, and he invited Attica Locke and S.A. Cosby. Both of them are African American crime novelists. And then Tom invited Carl Sudler, the Emory professor, and Carl Sudler wanted his graduate student to join in, and their whole world of expertise, their scholarship is all about Black incarceration and policing and all of that. So it just kind of organically bubbled up to be exactly the panel that you would watch if you had that question. But I didn't mean for it to happen. It just happened.
Well, it's a good time for it to happen,
Yeah.
especially since I was just going to say, I love Jericho Brown's quote when he won the Pulitzer. He's like, I don't know why I won the Pulitzer. I'm always trying to offend those people. So
Yeah.
I was like, man after my own heart. So, Joy, tell us a little bit about you. How did you end up in this position, being executive director of the book festival?
Well, I was the assistant program manager one year, and then next year that first year they didn't have a program director. The next year I became the program director, and this year I became the executive director. If you work for the Decatur Book Festival, you'll probably end up one day running it because we're pretty short-staffed and it's messy. So it just is what it is. We're going to professionalize any minute now.
Getting close. Are you the interim executive director? Or are you the executive?
I'm officially still an interim, yeah.
Okay.
But, there's not anybody else around.
Yeah, I didn't see anybody stepping up. So, but I mean that's cool. Like you got your own imprint. You can make your own mark on it, make it better. Hopefully, are you a writer as well? Is that?
I am a writer, but I'm not a current writer. I'm too busy.
Gotcha.
But I have an MFA. I have a dual genre MFA in creative nonfiction and in writing for young people. So yeah, I can write.
Awesome. So we got some comments streaming in. Mishi says, Kies Lehman was at DBF a few years ago. I was fortunate to see him. Nikki Salcedo says, Joy is awesome. I agree. Sarah 2020 said, "Hey George, let her talk." So you gotta let her talk, George.
Is that my wife? I'm wondering now.
I was wondering if that was Sarah Amos too. It might very well
Was
be your
are
wife.
you on the Twitter feed? Like the thing? No, it's not her.
KC
She's no.
Lehman.
So
I'm so
there's
sorry. So
yeah.
sorry. And see who else. I've been loving the Jocelyn Jackson Reed series, which is something that you've been doing in the interim, correct?
Yeah, we've been doing that since May, and this was in the process when we were back in the spring trying to figure out what to do, and we had already planned on having Jocelyn be the first kind of local celebrity curator of a track. And this was going to be a new tradition. I had it planned for the physical festival. I had a sponsor for a cocktail party. It was going to be great. And then COVID happened, and Jocelyn was willing to take it online and take a huge risk. So tomorrow night is our 11th and final event on Crowdcast with the Jocelyn series, and it's been so interesting. It's so DIY, but the content is so good, and Jocelyn is amazing. And I've had my colleague and I have had the pleasure of being in the green room with all these authors. Like Kylie Reed 3 weeks ago had just been nominated for the Booker Prize. And the next day she was in the green room with us, showing us her lemon tree that she was trying to get to grow in her apartment in New York. And so for all of those 10 events that we've been at so far, we've been behind there with the writers in these real situations. And it's been a gift. It's been great.
Who are some of the authors that live here locally? Because I bet you there are a few that our readers might not know about, besides Nikki Salcedo, of course.
Yep, Nikki, Tom Mullen, Jessica Handler, Susan Rebecca White, Mary Kay Andrews. She's a very popular writer. I mean, Emory's full of talent, of course. Yeah. And Agnes Scott, too. So, yeah, there's a lot of writers around.
You can throw a rock and hit a PhD around here. That's what I love about this place.
You really can. So it's interesting. I'm watching the signups for the virtual festival, and it's remarkable how interesting people are. Like, I think there are already over 300 people signed up for Jericho Brown's event. And then this crime panel, it's also like people are really just signing up for it. So you really can tell that it's no joke. We have an educated populace.
Yes, we do.
People read books here.
Yes, we do. And Decatur appreciates them all, because if I tried to pull this in Alabama, I'd be tarred and feathered. And they'd have run me out of town already.
It's a place to live, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, you're right about that. So if you talked about people signing up for the panel, so let's talk about the process. I want to go to the Decatur Book Festival this year and participate in these events. How do I do that?
You go to our website. You sign up you just click on the graphic. It takes you to Crowdcast. You've got to download Crowdcast, but that takes 2 seconds.
Okay.
Sign up for the event. And on the day of the event, you get a reminder in your email, and you just go to it, and there you are.
Okay, so it's that easy. But you do have to download an app or something like that to...
I don't know if it's an app. I don't know much about technology. It's something, kind of like an app.
So you go,
but it's not.
You download the thing, you sign up for the thing, you join the thing, and
Exactly.
And you're part of the thing. Okay, well that sounds easy enough. And you can do that through the book festival website?
That's right.
So who do you have helping you navigate the tech side of this? Because you're in the same boat that I am, where I'm just kind of figuring this crap out as I go.
Such a circus. Like, I think my title should be Circus Master. So who knows? Like, back in, I think it was March 5th or something, I wrote an email to Jared Blass, my contact at WABE, and I said, I'm trying to figure out how you something live, but I don't even know the words. Can you tell me the words just so I can try to find people? And he said, I think you're talking about webcasting or live streaming, and here's a friend. So I reached out to that friend, had a meeting with them. 2 days later, like, COVID shut us all down. But now I've got the words, and I'm doing all this research. I can't even make the TV work. I mean, I am just ridiculously bad at technology. And so I've just been through this crazy set of months trying to figure out how to do it. And really, to put on a virtual festival, I needed $50,000 just in tech support. I didn't have $50,000. I mean, I didn't have like $2,000. So I've just, it's been this process of scrambling around, begging sponsors for money, trying to get donations. I finally cobbled together a certain amount of money. And then I tried to find the webcasting or live streaming person. I went to Upwork, the freelancer website. There's not even a category for live streaming, or there wasn't when I was looking. There probably is now. So I went back to the AV firm that always does our AV at the festival, and I said, can you guys like help me out with this? And now they're our something 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 something, and we're really hoping it all works out.
They put the widgets on the widget so they can widget and
Yeah.
do the
Yeah.
widget. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
You need people like that in your life for sure. Twitch has been interesting. You know what I like about Twitch is it's very low tech in terms of process. So I did a podcast before I did this, and the podcast was such a pain in the ass because I would record it, and then I would go home and listen to it again and do a bunch of post processing on it. Here, it kind of takes care of itself. We tape it and then we're done, and we've got the interactive part of it. And Zoom, like, this is gonna sound like the most 40-something-year-old man statement, but I love Zoom. Like, I think it's a great. My mom can use it, and my mom is almost 65. And she's able to just hop on in there and Zoom. So that's been and it's great for this show as well. So hopefully, that you'll be able to continue to keep these live streaming components to it as well. I think I'm going to do all of my debates from now on
Yeah.
via this format because you don't have to worry about an audience.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I agree. There's suddenly like, why not have the book festival available to people who live in an assisted living center?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's I didn't even. What else am I not ever thinking about? I wish COVID has given us this opportunity, and maybe opportunity is the wrong word. COVID's forced us all to be more original in our thinking, and now we've got all these original thinkers all over the place.
So, I have a confession. I mainly read books via audiobooks. I have a subscription to Audible. And the reason for that is because I read and edit all day. And by the time I want to lie down and go to sleep, I don't want to read anymore. I want to kind of listen to something. Is there anything at the festival for people who primarily engage with books via audiobooks?
We know never before, but that might be something to think about. I mean, I have a Kindle. I like reading my Kindle because I have insomnia. So I wake up in the middle of the night, read, and then go back to sleep. I think it'd be good to figure that out. I mean, this is the year where suddenly traditions or routines need to be rethought. So, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be cool to have like a panel of just like the voice talent, that does some of those books, because I always want to meet those people. I want to be one of those people one day. Like.
Interesting. Just learned this, but Jocelyn Jackson does her own.
Oh wow.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I know there's some voiceover talent that lives in the area that does that for a living. So I was wondering if there were any. George, you got something to say?
No, the cat's trying to climb up me. That's all.
I was like, you look like the cat that swallowed the canary, but it actually looks like the cat is.
Not.
So,
Sorry, I love both of you. I'm sorry. I'm just being
no,
odd.
that's okay. That's what's fun about Twitch. Sometimes your cat shows up and does cat things. Well, I definitely want to wish you and the book festival best of luck this year. Thank you for doing it. Not only that, but thank you for finding a way to keep it going within these challenging circumstances, and thank you for trying to keep it going in a way that promotes the economic activity that kind of depends on this festival. Taking care of the restaurants in particular, it's very thoughtful, and certainly you could be forgiven for not even worrying about it this year because you're trying to do all these other things. So I mean, I think that's really great, and I think you've done a really nice job of keeping everybody on the same page with it. You want to stick around for a little bit? Because George went to a couple of protests last night, and I wanted to ask him some questions. Do you mind hanging out for that, or do you have to go?
I'm good.
Okay. George, so what the heck happened last night? Were you in Atlanta again?
Yes, I was in Atlanta again. A
Okay.
friend of mine sent me a text message saying, "Hey, they're marching like over by Woodruff Park," and I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I'm gonna blow this off." No, it's the guys you wrote about. Like, really? Like, yeah, the ones with the guns who were like with
The
the
NFAC?
no, not the NFAC. Because if it
Not
was
that
the
one.
NFAC, I'd be like, go ahead, just do what you're gonna do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
don't shoot anybody. Um, the no, it was the this not Black Panther group that I wrote about a month and a half, 2 months ago. Like the six, including like the photogenic young woman who's
Okay, so
um,
we gotta talk about that for just a second before we.
yeah,
So the whole night, so we got into a big kerfuffle online because this group showed up that George wrote about, and they identified themselves as the new Black Panthers. Well, the new Black Panthers, according to SPLC, are actually a designated hate group. So we written a story about that, and so we did the story and we wrote about it, and then we ran into them at a protest again, and their response was, and we did the story. We got a bunch of flack from people who were upset about it, and why are you maligning these peaceful protesters, et cetera, et cetera. I get it. We're trying to do better. But we ran into them at another event, and they said, "No, we're the new Est Black Panther." I think
yeah,
what it boiled down to is they didn't realize who the new Black Panthers were when they said that, and
right.
so anyway, that's just for context. This group is extremely, as somebody put it, suspiciously good looking group of people in very neat, crisp uniforms that
It's,
march and
and
have
it's
guns.
because they were actors. Like,
Right, they're
but
mostly actors.
it's complicated because yeah, they're trying to break into the movie business in Atlanta, but at least two of them have military experience. Um, and after talking with them for a while, it's clear to me that they're actually fairly sincere about their sort of political views and their desire to be activists in the scene. Like that, this isn't about their movie careers. But as soon as they showed up, everybody was like, "Well, yeah, you're like this is just a stunt or something like that," and I am reasonably certain at this point that it is not. Um, but I wanted to verify that, if you know what I mean. Needed eyes on it. So um, somebody said that they were out there, and by the time I got there, somebody had set off fireworks and smashed a window over at Zone 5, and people were starting to scatter. But I ended up catching up with them. There were about 200 people on the street. They'd been broken up into groups, and I caught up with a group with about 30 or 40 of them, including the 6 or 7 of them who were wearing uniforms and carrying weapons. And they were walking up Cortlandt Street, headed back to Woodruff Park, away from Peachtree and Pine. I'm not sure why they headed out that way. Somebody had an idea, and they just sort of went with it. Um, they're serious. And I was like, so I was a soldier for 5 years, and I have a sort of a sense of what I'd expect to see in terms of military acumen and security and all the rest of that. Um, they were walking the walk. They were disciplined. They were intelligent. Um, they were not the NFAC guys like the group, this not effing around coalition. Like they ended up shooting themselves. Like somebody actually shot themselves in the leg
Ugh,
at a march in Kentucky about a month or so
I think I
ago.
read that.
They're not serious people. I mean, they've got guns and apparently they're willing to use them, but they're not serious. Um, this group was at the very least disciplined, and I was impressed by it. Um, and they were not out there to go get arrested. That much was clear. They were there because they were concerned that some yahoo on the right might try to take a pot shot at protesters and that their presence might dissuade them. And that concern is not entirely unfounded, given what happened in Kenosha last night.
No.
Um, it looks like a back the blue far right teenager shot and killed two people and shot a third, like on the street in Kenosha. The kid lives in Illinois. Um, but he said, "Oh, rioters! I'm going to go grab my gun and I'm going to be a hero," and killed two people. Um, this was not a riot, not really. Like this was fairly tame by sort of Atlanta protest standards. A window got smashed and cops chased around people on the street for about an hour and a half. This was table stakes.
I guess it says something about the group that we were talking about, that they show up even when it's not at the zenith of protests. You know, they didn't show up just when it was fashionable to show up
Right.
and get seen on camera. They're still out there, still doing their thing. So that's good.
It
That's
is good. And I'm looking for signs of organization. Like the big problem right now, broadly, is that nobody knows who to negotiate with. Like, okay, like we want all of this to change so that we don't have street protests that risk riot or violence or danger, but there's nobody, it's not like you can pull somebody into a conference room and, cut a deal. Like it's not, there's no leadership to speak of. So when I see a group like this, I'm looking for leadership, and I saw some last night.
So the other thing, so a lot of people don't know this, or maybe more people know this than I think, but George also writes a regular column for The Intercept, in addition to writing for Decaturish, and you had one about everybody's favorite pro troll, Vernon Jones.
Oh my goodness.
Vernon Jones, who's basically gonna spend the rest of his life grifting on white conservatives.
That's basically it.
Yeah,
That's his
that's
that's his
basically.
goal.
So what is you watched the Vernon Jones? I could not.
Oh
You know,
no,
watching.
no, I
All
did. I
right.
watched it,
So I don't
and
watch the
I
conventions. I don't watch the Democratic or Republican conventions because it reminds me of my family embarrassing itself at Thanksgiving, and I just
yeah,
don't. I can't. So, but you did. George took one for the team and watched it. So what happened? What?
it's unhinged. Everything I'm seeing there is just crazy town. Like it's another planet they're describing, where law and order has broken down in society, and there's anarchy in the street, and people are going to come and kill you, and the cops won't show up, and then God help you, black people will move in next door, like, and then they're going to screw your neighborhood up. And I mean, basically, this is like it's like Goldwater on acid in 2020. So Vernon Jones is there, and he's just this rasher of. It's like take every mildly racist idea about what black people think as like and put it in the mouth of Vernon Jones so that he can say it so that the white guy next to him doesn't sound like a racist. That was Vernon Jones for 5 minutes. Um, and it's, like we're,
I'm surprised they only gave him 5 minutes. I'm surprised they didn't give him 30. I mean,
yeah, well, they're trying to mix it up. The thing that jumped out at me is this bit where he's talking about how he's got sort of police experience by proxy because he ran like DeKalb County, and how politicians need to give up, like politicians have their personal security and we should replace them with social workers because that's what they want for us. And I'm
George, hello, we with you? Joy, you still with us?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, George Cheedy has. He
Frozen.
might have frozen in place. I wonder if they had a power outage over there in Pine Lake. It's entirely possible. Well, George Cheedy did have a column on Decaturish.com today. He wrote about the protests in Atlanta last night. George definitely gets around if there's any. Yeah, we got the George Cheedy emote. Sorry, George. We'll try to get you back on if we can, my friend. But George Cheedy is just everywhere. Like when the monument came down, I don't know if you saw any of that, Joy. The photos that we ran of the monument coming down, like them with the hacksaw and stuff. George, of course, George was there. You know, why wouldn't George be there? He was basically every protest that happens in Atlanta. George is, it's like your bingo card, you know, like George Cheedy. It ain't a real protest till he shows up. But George is one of those people. Like, I'm always like, please don't go out there. He went to that nonsense in Stone Mountain before they had like officially called it off, and I was like, George, please, buddy, don't go out there. Like, just you've been to so many of these things, and you've been through so much. And of course he went, but they closed it. You can't, you know. He's like me. He's gonna do what he's gonna do.
Uh, yeah.
Well,
Well, we
go
need
ahead.
you guys. We need you guys.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that, Joy, and we appreciate your time today. We're gonna go on ahead, and unless anybody's got any other questions, we're gonna go ahead and end this today. A housekeeping note: I will not be here on Friday. We're going out of town. We will resume our Twitch show next Wednesday. We will have a guest of some sort, and we will be talking about something or other. We're always feel like we're always scrambling, but Joy graciously, it actually worked out because it's right before Labor Day weekend, and Joy was available, and you know it's good to promote the book festival. They do so much for us, and really, if you can go to the DecaturBookFestival.com, find that donate link, and throw them a few bucks. They're working really hard to give us some programming this year in some challenging circumstances, and they're definitely worthy of your support. Joy, thank you so much for joining us. I do hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful evening, and I hope the book festival goes very well for you. And I hope you'll come back again.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody. We're going to see you again next Wednesday. Take care. Bye bye.